Madam Speaker, I rise to make a statement on Fiji Pine Limited, as highlighted yesterday. Madam Speaker, Pine was planted in the 1960s by the government on land leased by landowners to Fiji Pine Commission then. The leases contained benefits of yearly ground rent and stumpage payments when pine was harvested. Ground rent was around $2 per hectare per annum. There were no other benefits on the leases as established in the 1960s. In 1990, by law, Fiji Pine Limited was incorporated to take over the assets, liabilities and obligations of Fiji Pine Commission effective from 1 January 1999. This, of course, after the 87 coup. Government, as part of this corporatization plan, then allocated the share capital into three classes. 100,000 A-class ordinary shares of $1 each. 2, 1 million B-class redeemable preference shares of $1 each. 3, 2064 Class C shares, redeemable preference shares of $1 each. And A-class shares carried voting and dividend rights and are not transferable. That goes to the landowners. B-class shares carrying voting rights but no dividend shares or no dividend rights, that goes to government. And C-class shares neither carrying voting or dividend rights, that again goes to government. Fiji Pine Trust, Madam Speaker, was established to represent the pine landowners, both landowners who leased the land to Fiji Pine Limited and the landowners of extension forests in Kandavu, Lomaiviti and Lau, who are all members of the Fiji Pine Trust. The Trust was allocated A-class ordinary shares in FPL, or Fiji Pine Limited, and these shares are not transferable or alienable, in other words, cannot be taken away from them. Government classified its investment into the venture into redeemable preference shares and accordingly was allocated B and C class shares. Honourable Nawaikula, for example, has made statements to this effect on his Facebook site that government hoodwinked landowners in the setup of FPL, where FPT received 0.2% shares. Prior to FPL being established, landowners had no shares in the Commission. They were simply lessors of land to Fiji Pine Commission. Honourable Nawaikula says landowners were hoodwinked. He is then blaming, of course, the Ratumara government that established the Commission, and then, of course, the Fiji Pine Limited is done after the 87 coup, Madam Speaker. Government and Fiji Pine Trust each have equal voting rights in Fiji Pine Limited, and that is on the board itself. As far as dividends are concerned, Madam Speaker, government, despite being 99.8% shareholder, does not have any dividend rights. Fiji Pine Trust, with 0.2% shares, has 100% dividend rights. One may ask why government has these 99.8% shares when it gets nothing. Government provides the stability for Fiji Pine Limited. As per the original setup, government has the option of transferring shares to Fiji Pine Trust if A, Fiji Pine Limited pays $60 million back to the government, redeeming shares, and government opts to transfer shares. As we know, Fiji Pine Limited was insolvent and almost went into receivership in 2008. So Fiji Pine Limited was never in a position to pay $60 million to government to allow the government the option to redeem its shares. Further, we must understand that as per the original setup, if government redeems its shares, less will go to the landowners until such time as $60 million is paid off to the government as per the Articles of Association. Whether government chooses to redeem its shares mainly depends on the ability of Fiji Pine Trust to run Fiji Pine Limited. Fiji Pine Limited, Madam Speaker, provides Fiji Pine Trust with an annual grant of $300,000 for the operations and in particular to handle landowner affairs. Fiji Pine Trust continuously, when it is run independently by the landowners or the nominees by the landowners, continuously runs out of money. Fiji Pine Trust, Madam Speaker, has not held any beneficiary meeting for over a decade. Maybe that's what Honourable Nawaikula has got Fiji Pine Trust and Fiji Pine Limited confused with. 2010 was the only year since the inception of Fiji Pine Limited when $500,000 in dividends were declared to Fiji Pine Trust. As per FPT's membership, also extension pine landowners from Kandavu, Lomaiviti and Lau, the dividends were partially distributed to landowners from the extension areas that have no link to Fiji Pine Limited. In the extension areas, landowners in Kandavu, Lau and Lomaiviti can harvest their pine and sell and do as they please without Fiji Pine Limited's input or say, and indeed the land is not leased to Fiji Pine Limited. Significant monies were also used by Fiji Pine Trust in administering the dividend distribution to landowners at $500,000. This led to a huge outcry from landowners leasing the land to Fiji Pine Limited, as they received next to nothing from Fiji Pine Trust. And indeed, they all came to see the Honourable Prime Minister. But Speaker, apart from that, Fiji Pine Limited also pays 5.5% of all logging and cartage costs to what we call forest-based companies, FBCs, and forest-based trusts, FBTs. The money is paid out to be used for landowner business and community developments in each of the 6 forests in Bua, Maduata, Ra, Lololo, Nandi and Nambo. Whilst FPL pays these levies to the FBCs and the FBTs, the trusts and the forest-based companies, the FBCs and FBTs are to report to the Fiji Pine Trust as landowner representatives. They don't report to anybody else. However, historically, Madam Speaker, Fiji Pine Trust, the FBCs and FBTs have not been able to use the monies for their landowner benefits. Instead, monies given by FPL, Fiji Pine Limited, is abused in administration and mismanaged. For example, Bua Forest-Based Company and Trust has received $2.2 million from Fiji Pine Limited in the last 6 years. But rather than growing that money for the benefit of the landowners in Bua, the monies have been used up or diminished in its overall aggregate amount. Landowners who became aware of the failures of these institutions have raised serious questions on the manner in which these institutions function. And in fact, Madam Speaker, many of these people who try and administer these are people from outside, lawyers and other people. You can understand, Madam Speaker, why any government acting in the best interest of the Fiji Pine landowners will not transfer government shares in FPL to Fiji Pine Trust, even if FPL could pay back $60 million to the government, as per the share structure. The government is the custodian of the Pine landowners will not allow the return of the past culture for Fiji Pine for the ordinary landowners to be cheated and shortchanged through the mismanagement and corruption. Despite the Fiji Pine Trust demonstrating that they poorly manage funds, Honourable Nawaikula is saying that government should take the option of transferring shares to Fiji Pine Trust when they're not even being able to deliver any single cent. Madam Speaker, to ensure that the benefits of the pine industry went directly to the pine landowners who leased the land to Fiji Pine, the lease security bonus payout was made, or the LSBP. It was introduced in 2013 by the unanimous decision of the 6th Board of Directors of Fiji Pine Limited, which has government reps and also the Pine Trust reps, the landowner reps. LSBP, Madam Speaker, gives bonuses directly to Matangalis and LOUs that leased the land to Fiji Pine Limited and renewed expiring leases in a timely manner. When the pine industry is at the brink of collapse and landowners weren't renewing their leases due to the failures of the very institutions that were set up to protect and look after the landowners, the Fiji Pine Limited established direct relationship with the landowners to give them returns. The success of the lease security bonus payout, or LSBP, is reflected in 23,434.12 hectares of expiring leases renewed from 2012 to now. The landowners have reaped the benefits of this initiative handsomely and with delight. Total land under Fiji Pine Limited, Madam Speaker, is 83,000 hectares, not 50,000 hectares as Honourable Gavoka misled Parliament yesterday, Madam Speaker. On the 4th of May, Madam Speaker, Honourable Nawaikula in his Facebook page said, $7 million, what a hefty sum, and questioned the legality of the $7 million payout by the Fiji Pine Limited to its pine landowners. It appears that Honourable Nawaikula is upset that the Fiji Pine landowners received a hefty payout of $7 million. On the 10th of May, Honourable Nawaikula put up on his Facebook page that it was difficult to work out how the $7 million was calculated, alleging that Fiji Pine Limited had not filed any audited accounts since 2003-2005. He then contradicted the $7 million was peanuts, earlier saying what a hefty payout it was. Peanuts, hefty payout, we don't know what it is. Fiji Pine Limited has its annual audited accounts up to date. The 2017 accounts were signed in April this year and submitted to the Ministry of Forestry on the 1st of May 2018. Honourable Nawaikula, Madam Speaker, has engaged in fear-mongering by saying that the $7 million could be bribes to alienate landowners' land. Landowners' land cannot be alienated by benefits they receive from FPL. These are the kind of mistruths and lies, Mr. Speaker, that Honourable Nawaikula spreads whenever government is doing something good to the landowners. I wonder where he was in 2000 and 1990s and 1980s. As always, Mr. Speaker, he is perhaps confused that it is not Fiji Pine Limited but Fiji Pine Trust, the entity he wants government to transfer shares to, or which has not filed its audited accounts, nor held any landowner beneficiary meetings for over a decade. Fiji Pine Trust. Fiji Pine Trust is different to Fiji Pine Limited, Honourable Nawaikula. Madam Speaker, I'm sure a lot of our landowners will be watching this session through live feed. They can see for themselves how Honourable Nawaikula is trying to mislead them on Fiji Pine Limited shareholding structure and criticise the $7 million landowners received by spreading lies that FPL has not submitted its audited accounts when it has. I urge the Pine landowners, Madam Speaker, to always get the facts and then decide what is right for them and for the future generations. The record-breaking $7 million lease security bonus payout has brought many smiles to the Pine landowners. As highlighted yesterday, one of the landowning units had only 8 adults in it that received over $340,000. We were personally there, Madam Speaker, in Drasa to witness firsthand the joy and appreciation on the faces of the Pine landowners. From $0 returns, the amount of LSB has phenomenally increased to $7 million in the last 5 years, and it is sustainable and it will continue to grow. The transformation of the pine industry from a position of doom and gloom to a position of success and strength in a very short period of time shows what we can achieve, Madam Speaker, when the political will of the government is combined with prudent and sound financial management of companies such as Fiji Pine Limited and the appointment of people on merit. It is this success that everyone should be proud of as a Fijian. For the last few years, Madam Speaker, the Honourable Prime Minister has told the Pine landowners that once the historical company debts are paid off and the factory capital upgraded, Pine landowners will receive more in LSBP returns. Madam Speaker, very quickly, $54 million of debt has been paid off in the last 7 years. Honourable Nawaikula never talks about debts. In 2013, after 28 years of borrowing, FPA fully repaid European Investment Bank loan taken in 1985, amounting to $2.3 million. The loan was in default. It signifies the old culture of taking debt and not repaying for 28 years. In 2014, FPL paid $6.7 million loan taken from Fijian holdings within 17 months of taking the loan. This signifies the new present culture, Madam Speaker, and the interest rate, I stand to be corrected, was about 8%. In 2015, FPL paid $10 million loan taken from the FDB. In the last 7 years, it's reduced FNPF debt by $4 million, reduced government debt by $3.6 million, reduced Westpac, the main financier's debts, by $27 million. This year, it fully paid Westpac's loan amounts with one-off settlement of $4.4 million, Madam Speaker. Tropic has a balance debt of $1.4 million, Madam Speaker, which is a subsidiary company, Fiji Pine Limited, to FNPF. Fiji Pine has an $8.4 million debt to government. The government debt was accumulated between 1990 to 2001. Madam Speaker, what little debt Fiji Pine Group here has is offset by the great deposits that they hold, and in fact I had the figures, Madam Speaker, regarding the actual deposits they hold, which far exceeds the debts they have. In other words, is debt-free. Madam Speaker, Tropic has successfully carried out $67 million of factory capital upgrades in the last 7 years. I urge, in particular, Honourable Nawaikula, to go talk to the CEO, get a site visit authorized, and go and see the machinery that they have. State-of-the-art machinery, Madam Speaker. And our boys, our local men, have been trained to go up to Sweden and other places and run those machines that come back with that knowledge, Madam Speaker. The entire Drasa aging factory complex, plant and equipment has been upgraded and rebuilt to a state-of-the-art facility through cash flows generated by Tropic without a single cent of borrowing. See, they're not concerned about what's happening downstream. They're simply going and actually making all these, very wild allegations, not thinking about the business, not thinking about the returns the landowners will get if you run a successful business down the track. It's not about cutting the pine only, it's about how you're going to process it. All leases that are renewed have been restocked with pine. Based on the strengthening of the industry's foundations, paying off historical and defaulting loans, successfully upgrading factory capital, successfully replanting of pine for the future generations to come, strengthening of the balance sheet, P&L and cash flows, and prudential financial management, the $7 million record-breaking LSBP was possible. It has not been paid by taking loans. It is from the cash generated in the company. From receiving absolutely zero, zilch, nothing in terms of bonuses or dividends from the past governments, pine landowners now receive $7 million, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the increase of LSBP signifies the honouring of promise made to the pine landowners, Madam Speaker, to renew the expiring leases to Fiji Pine, and in return, the landowners will receive returns and benefits from profitability. Landowners are receiving benefits that they never received in the past, Madam Speaker. Mistrust between landowners and Fiji Pine Limited, Madam Speaker, has been replaced by trust. Unfortunately, others on the other side want to come and create mistrust. Apathy has been replaced by a sense of ownership. Being neglected has been replaced by a sense of partnership and care. With all of this, Madam Speaker, confidence in the industry has been re-established. The pine landowners, the Fijian people, and even members of the opposition, Madam Speaker, should be proud of this success. Thank you.